Out-of-Bounds Show is powered by the award-winning golf courses at Dancing Rabbit Golf Club in Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Good morning. Welcome in. The show is powered by the Golden Moon Casino Sportsbooks. They've got their win totals up. Go ahead and dive in. Make some Christmas money. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. The Out of Bounds Show. ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Our TV graphics are messing with me, but that's all right. You can watch the show right now on Facebook. Search the Out of Bounds Show. Okay. You can watch the show on Facebook, search the Out of Bounds Show, and you can watch the show on YouTube, search Out of Bounds Sports. Got that? Facebook is the Out of Bounds Show, and YouTube is Out of Bounds Sports. We want to welcome in our friend Mike Detillier, Mike D, LSU Insider, WWL Radio TV New Orleans. He joins us on the Corona Premier Guest Line, and we're streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app. Mike D, we had Tom Luganbill mention he called the LSU spring game, and he said that he wouldn't be surprised if Nussmeier won the job. Obviously, Miles Brennan's been there forever. I think there's one other guy that may be into consideration. Would you be surprised if Nussmeier won the job?
I thought Garrett was the most improved player from a year ago on that LSU team. I really did. He was a gunslinger. He didn't like the moniker, but that's exactly what he was a year ago. He was a gunslinger. You know, he's a little bit different than other LSU quarterbacks that we've seen in that he's barely 6 foot tall. He's a movement guy. He throws well off the run. He's very confident as a player, extremely. And I think maybe a little bit too much so, maybe year one. And he's got some experience. I saw improvement in his reads and his recognition skills, and knowing a few guys that are on the staff today, they brought that up to me that he has gotten better in that category of reads and recognition. So it wouldn't be a total shock to me. I still think Miles is the guy. But I think Garrett is right there. The other player is Jaden Daniels from Arizona State, who started for 2 seasons for the Sun Devils. Year one, I thought he played really well. He's a tremendous athlete, long, lanky, lengthy guy that's got tremendous foot speed. And what we saw a year ago at Arizona State was an offensive line that couldn't protect him well. He was erratic throwing the football. And his receivers, it was no better than 50-50 if they were going to catch any pass he threw to them. So he went through the transition in the spring. So I think what told me it was Miles Brennan was every year for Manning, Archie will go to the head coach and say, I don't want a quarterback controversy here. I don't want him answering 5,000 questions about who he's up against. Give me your number one guy. Brian Kelly sent Miles Brennan.
Okay.
So maybe Luganbill isn't aware of that, but I get where he's coming from with Garrett. That I did think he was the most improved player from a year ago, especially on offense. There's no question about it. But he's a little bit different. He's not your 6'3" quarterback. He's your 6 foot quarterback, and man, he makes some plays now, and he is supremely confident as a player. He really is. But I think if you started the season tomorrow, it would be Brennan.
Okay. But you feel like Well, even right now, coming out of the spring, but in August, that it'll be really close between Garrett Nussmeier. Is it Nuss or Noose?
It's Nussmeier.
Nuss. Between Nussmeier and Miles Brennan, you feel like it will be super competitive and really close, Mike?
Yeah, I think all three, because Jaden brings that running ability. Now, I do know Brian told us twice, on both times we've had him on WWL, that, I'm not crazy about, alternating quarterbacks. But if I had to, I would. If I have to, I will. So I think what he's telling you is I would like a clear-cut winner, and that, but that doesn't mean I'm in bed with him forever. So let's say Miles gets the nod, and maybe there's a rough road. I don't think he would have any issue, because he's not married to any of these guys. He really isn't. Now, the one guy he is married to is the freshman Walker Howard. And so this was the Saturday of the Manning camp, and Archie decides that he's going to invite all of the LSU quarterbacks to come in if they wanted to. And all of them did. Walker Howard, Garrett Nussmeier, Jaden Daniels, they all came in along with, Miles was already there for 2 days. And the oohs and ahs weren't about Garrett Nussmeier and Jaden. It was Walker Howard. And he's the future. He's the future at quarterback. No question.
Okay. So
that brings another stick in the spoke with all of this. And so, you can tell Walker's got some talent, and he's got some arm talent. And again, with his dad was a former starting quarterback at LSU, and Jamie Howard, and he's a very talented young man. But again, he's a true freshman. I think they'd really like to redshirt him if they could, to redshirt him this year, and then next year I think he would be the clear front runner for the job in 2023.
All right. So Miles Brennan is in his 6th year.
Yeah, it was one of the funniest lines of the Manning camp. Walker brought up to him, he says, Miles, I remember when you signed with LSU, I was in the 7th grade.
Really?
And you figure out the math, that's true.
What?
Miles was in the 7th grade. I mean, Walker was in the 7th, he was in his 7th grade. And so, Miles got a kick out of Walker saying it, but it's true. I mean, Miles is like a 10-year veteran, so to speak, at LSU. And so, he's been through a lot, and he's had some injuries along the way.
And he's been so close, Mike. I mean, he was playing well a couple of years ago and got injured.
He got injured in the Vanderbilt.
Oh, man.
He got injured in that game and against Missouri, and he tried to come back from that and couldn't, and he went to see a lot of specialists for that, and it was normally an injury you would suffer in a car crash, is what doctors told him. And so he came back from that. I still believe. Now, some of them who tell you, I knew it was going to be Max Johnson last year. Well, I do know who I was talking to, and he was the head coach. And if had Miles been healthy, he would have been the starter. Now, I'm not saying he'd have held on to it, but then he gets injured. He was at a fishing camp, and he gets a shoe caught, in a stair, and he takes a tumble and breaks his shoulder. And so, the guys that tell you that other stuff, and they got a couple of them that they got insider information, but I don't know who they get it from. I do know who I got it from, and I think Miles would have been the guy had he not gotten hurt. Now, could he have held off Max throughout the season? That would have been the big question, but He didn't get that opportunity and looked as though he was headed to Nebraska. And at the last minute, Brian Kelly comes in and says, "No, I want you to stay."
Oh man, this is fascinating to me because Miles Brennan has been so close. He's got skills. He could be a good player. LSU's always loaded around all these dudes. And then the Nussmeier thing is interesting. And then you got the other two, the Arizona State transfer. I don't think Walker Howard's ready either. So, man, wow. Brian Kelly, he it could be close 2-3 weeks into August practice. Mike?
Yeah, I think for LSU, when you take, listen, they loaded at wide receiver.
Yeah, they are.
The defensive line. They got some talent there. Because I've had people, say, well, they left the cupboard bare. Well, I had an SEC head coach tell me, the cupboard bare? When I took over, I'm not going to say the program, I didn't have no Mason Smith, Ali Gay, B.J. Ojolari. When I took over, I didn't have no Micah Baskerville or Greg Penn. When I took over in that front seven at linebacker, here's the crazy part. The area that normally is the strength of LSU on defense is the biggest question mark this year. Cornerback. You lose Stingley and Flott early to the NFL. Elias Ricks and McLaughlin made business decisions, and Elias goes to Alabama. McLaughlin goes to Arkansas. So you lost your top 4 corners. And now you got a lot of transfer guys, but how does that emerge? Because normally that has been the strength of that football team, has been in the secondary. And this year, it is the biggest question mark. And you can make an argument the biggest question mark on that football team is that cornerback. And normally that's been the strength of their team.
No doubt. But surely they have some, they may not be experienced, but surely they got some guys on the roster that they project.
They got a lot of transfer people.
Okay.
You got transfer people from Oklahoma State. You got transfer people, University of Louisiana and Gardner, who I think is a really good player. You had a former starting cornerback from Ohio State who has battled a knee injury, and now he's here. So you've got some talent, but it's still quite, you don't know. And so that is going to be interesting to see how that works out at corner. But I think they can get a push up front. Their linebacking core is really good, and the safety position I think, has always been good at LSU, and I think it is again this year. The big question mark on offense is consistency at quarterback and how quickly all this meshes in the secondary, especially at corner. And the other part, and again, we had one guy who supposedly covers the LSU, but he says, well, kicking is irrelevant. My thing is, kicking's irrelevant. You ought to be kicked in the head. The kicking game is important, and the fact that their kicker, gets picked, and he's with the Browns now, you got a true freshman in Nathan Dibert from Michigan. Now, unsolicited, Brian Kelly went on and on and on about him with us, that he thinks that he's every bit as good as anybody that's kicked at LSU the last few years. And Cade York was there. And in my opinion, he was the best field goal kicker I've ever seen at LSU in my 30 years covering the team. Can't tell me kicking is irrelevant. These games in the SEC are all close. Field position matter, and points are premium. But I think LSU's got a pretty good team. But, when you're not secure at quarterback, and you've got some question marks in the secondary, and you got a true freshman kicker, that raises kind of the bar a little bit here. But Brian's always put a lot of emphasis on the kicking game, and he's made it a point in the times we've spoke about, Brian Polian and how much time they spend in the kicking game. Because he thinks that it matters in 3 to 4 games a year if you don't have your kicking game settled.
Okay.
That it could cost you 3 to 4 games a year.
Yeah, Mississippi State last year.
I think Kelly's absolutely right about it. I think he's absolutely right about it.
Okay.
Now, again, some of the veteran sportscasters or sports writers, they don't believe that, but again, God bless them. they'll be the first geniuses that want to write a story about how much LSU misses not having Cade York. In the off season, that's the least of their problems. No, it's a major issue with a true freshman coming in as a kicker, and he brought in his own punter from Notre Dame because LSU lost their punter too.
Ah, okay.
They lost their punter, the kickoff specialist, and field goal kicker. Bang, all across the board, and their top return man.
Mike,
he went to Nebraska.
Dang. Mike Detillier, LSU Insider, WWL Radio, TV New Orleans. He joins us on the Corona Premier Guest Line. Show is brought to you by Sound and Communications. Mike, I'm looking at win totals for LSU. It's at 6.5.
I'm taking the over on that.
I am too as I walk through the schedule.
I took that already. One of the things with Brian, and the one time he snapped a little bit out of reporter was about, what do you think about what Vegas is saying? And he said, I didn't come here to win 7 games.
Whoa! Oh.
He said, no, they didn't hire me, and I didn't come here to win 7 games. And so I think he sort of laid the groundwork that, okay, you want to believe that? That's great and fine. But that's not what I'm here for. They're not paying me $10 million a year to be a 7-5 coach.
Right.
No matter if it's year 1 or year 3. Now, if it's in year 3, then he might be in trouble. But I do think that he's got enough talent to win 8+.
8.
Being an 8-4 team and maybe a 9th win in a bowl game. Now, Brando thinks they are a double-digit winning team because Tim has been on the show a couple different times, and he thinks they'll win 10 games. But I think the 6.5. I'm going to go with the over on that.
Okay.
Because they say, well, the Florida State game's not a home game. Well, what the hell you think playing in New Orleans is for LSU? Come on, common sense. But listen, we've had a couple people tell us that too, and I'm almost had to pick myself up off the seat that it's a neutral site. Neutral site. They got more LSU fans in New Orleans than they do in Baton Rouge.
Right. That's right.
Because of the amount of people there. It's a home game when LSU plays in the Superdome in New Orleans. That might be breaking news for some of the national guys, but it is a home field advantage for LSU.
I think the swing game is at Florida, Mike.
I think the game for me, and it's always been a pivotal game, has been Auburn.
Oh.
Those Auburn games
That's true.
have been sort of nutty across the board. And LSU had them by the teriyaki last year and let them loose because they had them for a while. And then Nix was unbelievable. It really was.
Yeah.
He played maybe the best game he's ever played in an Auburn uniform. And getting away from, they had him bottled up, and he made some big plays with his feet. So I think that Auburn game is critical because literally they don't have to leave the state of Louisiana in September.
Right.
In early August. Mm. Everything is either in New Orleans or home.
Yeah.
You got to get off to a fast start.
Brian should take care of, I just don't think, I don't know, Calzada at quarterback, Brian Harsin, it looks like they're in dysfunctional and turmoil, chaos.
But just when you think that'll happen,
well, that's true.
You come up with some. Listen, Coach O was in trouble a few years ago in that Auburn game, and Auburn dominated them in the first half. And all of a sudden, that heat of South Louisiana started to beat down on them in the second half, and DJ Chalk returns a punt. And listen, it was 50-50 if DJ would catch a punt, because I've been at the practices, and DJ, he was hit and miss. But boy, when he was hit, he was something. And he returns that punt, and it changed the entire game. And LSU was down. I want to say it was like 20-3 or something in that range.
I remember
Russell Gage makes a one-handed catch at the end of the first half for a score. But it was chalk on a special teams play that really changed the outcome. And, man, the Auburn players at the end, the flowers had wilted on that team. And yet, those LSU Auburn games have been really weird. I'm going to be honest with you. Throughout the years, and for as long as I could remember, it has been a pivotal game for both teams. And we talked about this a few years back, when LSU lost his last game, and it looked as though the loser of that game would get fired. And it came down to a play at the end, and the time ran out, and Les got fired after the game.
Wild.
And Malzone, he survived. Gus survived then.
We'll leave it there. We'll see who it is. Miles Brennan, Nussmeier. They'll be throwing to some talented receivers. And I like LSU over at 6.5 win total. He is Mike D. Mike Detillier, at Mike Detillier on Twitter. He joined us on the Corona Premier guest line. Have a great week, Mike D. Thanks.
Thank you, Bo.
WWL Radio TV New Orleans. Mike Detillier, brought to you by Sound and Communication, soundcomav.com. And, of course, they'll put together your church AV system, conference room, sound and video systems, PA system for your high school football, junior college, G5, P5, soundcomav.com, the leader in top quality audio and visual. All right, let's talk food today. We did that earlier in the first show. Now we'll in the first hour of the show. And this show's flying by the way. Highball Eats in Fondren. It's right by the Capri, the new movie theater. And Highball Eats is the restaurant and bar. It's open for lunch and dinner. And they took the greatest hits from Robert St. John's Hattiesburg restaurants, including Crescent City Grill, El Rayo, Tabella, you know the drill. And they created a menu at Highball Eats in Fondren for lunch and dinner. It's a restaurant and bar first, and then a super cool movie theater and bowling alley. Highball Eats in Fondren, open for lunch and dinner. Plenty of parking behind there. Greatest hits from Robert St. John's restaurants in Hattiesburg, including fresh seafood, gumbo, Tex-Mex bowls, all at Highball Eats in Fondren. Bill Blackwell, Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame, 9:15.